Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the Walkthrough. I am your host, Intern Joe Macheca. With me, as I mentioned on Twitter, this week's episode was going to be live number one, so this should change. But then, and I have it on in the background as I apologize real quick. But no, so I've got my one of my good friends with me, Jack Velker. Jack, what's going on?
What's up, man? Having a good time right now. Just got one thing to say real quick before we get this thing going. How about them Cowboys? I'm just joking. How about them Bills, baby? How about them Bills? They're up 30-3 right now over one of the best teams in the NFC. So, yeah, man, the Bills are back, baby. Having a good time. And, so good way to start off. But, yeah, happy to be here, Joe. Thank you, as always, for having me. And let's get this thing going, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a fun little show because we are live. Desert Ops asks what's the deal with Braden Lee. We will get to that. We will get to a bunch of the 2024 classes. We know signing day is coming up, but Jack, I wanted to lead off with the transfer portal class. I know Mike Yuva is going to join us a little bit later as well to keep things cooking in the transfer portal class, but just looking at that. Jack, what are you seeing initially from South Carolina's portal class? It's really coming together. We've had a lot of welcome homes recently. What are you seeing from the portal class and who also excites you?
Dude, it's been nuts so far, right? Like, just think about the last 2 weeks, guys. Like, about a week and a half ago, you have the world's on fire, right? Like, everyone's transferring. But honestly, it wasn't as bad as you thought because let's be real, most of those guys outside of like Mitch Jeter and like Juice Wells, the rest of them are guys that aren't going to really play at all here. They never played really at South Carolina, so why should they, not leave for a new opportunity, right? So now you fast forward to this past week and everything's changed. I think you just gotta trust in what this team's doing. Cause I mean, I think they have a good idea of what they need and they've gone out and gotten it. They flipped their running back room in a few days. Their defense, they've added a few big pieces. Now they've got a new tight end coming in. Like, this has been a great week for South Carolina. And, I'm sure Mike, Chris, Wes, they can definitely, touch more on all this stuff when and if they join. But it's a huge difference. What a difference a week makes, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so, I mean, starting with the portal, like Jack kind of mentioned, Shane is going after, positions of need. You look at the running back room, you're starting to see, I mean, obviously the push for the defensive tackle room. You got your two starters back in Tonka and Boogie. And it's a big help when you can go get a guy like Darius Jules, I believe is his name, from Pittsburgh. That's another big body. And then you also got the defensive tackle from the JUCO, Jerome Simmons. That's another big boy. So to be able to return what you did and then go after, the guys that you are in LT Overton still, up in the air, whether or not he's going to go to South Carolina, it's still, I would say South Carolina is in as good of a position as anybody in terms of that battle. But really beefing up the defensive line. Jack, what else are you seeing from Carolina in the portal?
And like I said, they've flipped their running back room in a week span. You've gotten Oscar Adaway, Rocket Sanders, and then who else did they just get? They got Jorn Howell. I'm working on all these names, guys. Don't worry. But you get three good rushers. And think about it, South Carolina hasn't had 1,000-yard rusher since Kevin Harris did it back in 2020. So I mean, they've needed that go-to running game or that running back. And look, I mean, honestly, their passing game has been pretty good the last few years with Spencer Rattler and stuff. But now you don't have him. So you have maybe Lenore Sellers, maybe KJ Jefferson, AJ Swan, someone like that to come in, or Malik Murphy. You're not going to have that same passing attack next year because you want Xavier to get back. You still have a bunch of holes in this team, but you're filling them. But also, you're now getting the running back room together, and that's definitely what's been missing because South Carolina always had a pretty good passing attack, but they didn't have a run game last year. Teams look at the Clemson game. The South Carolina did not rush for much at all in that game with Mario Anderson or DJ Braswell, anyone like that. It was just a one-dimensional offense, and now next year, I think there's a lot of optimism that this can be potentially a run-first offense, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Yeah. But if you get another receiver or two in the portal, you also have Bennett coming in next season, if I'm not mistaken, out of Greenville in high school recruiting. But, I think definitely next year, I think the offense will look a lot better, especially in the run game.
Yeah, most certainly. And I mean, John Edward brings it up. AJ Swan as well, coming to South Carolina. I believe that's pretty much close to reported, or it's being reported that AJ Swan.
Haven't seen anything officially
Yeah,
yet. I know it's out. I know it's
trending in
out.
the
Yeah,
it's trending in the right direction for AJ Swan.
yeah. We're not
So,
gonna say it's gonna happen yet because it
yeah,
hasn't. But I mean, it probably will. But again, we don't want to assume something. But hey, it would be a good ad, right? I mean, look, it's a Vanderbilt quarterback, but I mean, honestly, some of Vanderbilt's players are a lot better than most people probably think. So and yeah, you're right. Hale,
yeah.
yeah.
Hale
So
McGranahan's got it. Yep. So
yeah,
again,
so
we don't have anything yet on Gamecock Central, but I'm sure it's in the works. So yeah, working on that. But Jack, the quarterback room, I mean, potentially AJ Swan is in there. You've got Lenore Sellers. How, because you did have to go out and get a quarterback. You're bringing in a guy like Swan. Is Swan going to compete for the starting job? How do you see this working out? Because obviously Lenore Sellers is the clear favorite.
yeah, so I know you
Oh,
had to
wait,
go
hold
out
on
and
one
get
sec,
a
Jack. Yeah, Hale is pretty locked in. They do a great
Oh
job
yeah,
over there at the Big
no,
Spurt. Yeah, and
no,
we just
24/7
don't have
doesn't.
anything yet on confirmed for Gamecock Central. That's why we're saying it as it is. John Edward. We love Hale. He's really, really awesome.
Oh, yeah, man.
But yeah, sorry, Jack.
No, Hale does good work, man.
He's
24/7.
awesome.
Those guys
We
over
love
there do
him.
the work, but
Yeah.
so do we. So don't count us out just yet. But anyway, yeah, with the quarterback situation, yeah. So you only have obviously you lost Spencer Rattler. That's the biggest loss to the offseason for South Carolina. And then you have a bunch of guys, Colton Gauthier and Tanner Bailey, guys like that transferring out. So you only have two quarterbacks on scholarship returning next year, if I'm not mistaken, with Luke Doty and Lenore Sellers. And even at that, Luke Doty might just move over to wide receiver full time. We don't know yet. I don't know if Doty exactly would compete for the starting job. I think he probably will maybe in the spring. I just don't see him winning that job, if I'm being honest. I think it is going to come down to a transfer quarterback versus Lenore Sellers. And I know everyone's going to be like, oh, Lenore Sellers, clear favorite. He should win. He needs to be our starter day one. I mean, it's not that simple, guys. I mean, well, if you're bringing in AJ Swan, for example, right? He's not coming here to be a bench player, right?
Yep.
He's been in the SEC. He's played. He actually started a few games for Vanderbilt this season, I think, with that whole quarterback carousel they got going on over there in Nashville. But he's a guy that has a lot more experience right now than Lenore Sellers. And I know we saw glimpses. We saw the 50-yard touchdown pass, which I think was arguably the best throw I've probably seen in college football recently. It was just a dime. Perfect throw. And then you have the rushing touchdown and the flashes of what he can do as a dual threat quarterback. But he's done that in garbage time, right? We haven't seen him play meaningful, legit starting snaps yet. And I mean, maybe he'll be just fine. Maybe I'm just, thinking about this a little too much. But I think if you bring a transfer quarterback in, you have to give them a fair shake. And I would probably roll with the transfer quarterback, depending on who it is. AJ Swan, KJ, Malik Murphy would be awesome, right? I mean, yeah, he was a second string on Texas, but he started a few games this year. And hey, Texas wanted to pick him over Arch Manning off the bench. So, I mean, that just says a lot right there. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Still got a long way to go, but I think Swan's going to come in. Yeah, exactly. Swan's going to come in here, compete, and I think it'll be a good competition, regardless of who wins.
Yeah, Jack, Mike and I have talked about it quite a lot on Talking Tuesdays. It's a really, really, really fine line that you're playing with Lenore Sellers right now because you have to bring in a guy. You need depth at the quarterback position. Unless you're going to make your wide receiver, one of your wide receivers, play quarterback or something, you need more quarterbacks on the roster. So you have to go out and add somebody. Now you don't want to go out and add somebody that's gonna, rattle Lenoris or put his head in a mindset that you don't want going into the job. You still want him to be confident in himself going into this job that he can win it, but you also want to push him a little bit. You want to bring in somebody that's going to, not let him get complacent necessarily either, because you don't want that either. If you have a guy as young as he is, as talented as he is, if he walks in to, spring ball and summer ball thinking that he's going to win the job and that this is all his and, it's the kingdom come, it's gonna, it's not gonna turn out well. So it's a very, very fine line that you're towing right now. If you're Shane Beamer and this coaching staff, in terms of who you add in the portal, because again, if you shake a kid like Lenoris, that's not good. I think on Talking Tuesdays, I kind of compared it to Zach Wilson a little bit, where you can kind of shake a kid's confidence, and it's not the same. So Scav, absolutely right. Adding Swan only makes Lenoris better. Right, exactly. And, what I'm referencing to is in the KJ Jefferson situation, right? Because if you go get a guy who's an established starter like KJ Jefferson, you're essentially saying that, okay, you're bringing him in to be the starter. When you bring in Swan, like Jack said, you're bringing in a guy that's going to compete for the job, right? I don't think Swan would be, the favored guy to start in this situation when he does come in. So again, it's a really, really tricky situation that you're in with Lenore Sellers, because again, you want him to work. You need him to work. You need him to keep improving his game, because if he gets complacent, you're in trouble, Jack.
I like the Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson comparison you kind of made there. Obviously it's NFL, college football is completely different, but just think about it. Like, if you bring in someone that's arguably worse than Sellers, that's not going to make him better, in my opinion. I props to South Carolina for going out and trying to go get quarterbacks, man. Like they need to
on the roster.
You have two guys on the roster, and look, I mean, you can go get garbage guys.
Three guys with you have Dante Reno coming in as well.
Yeah, Dante Reno too. So almost forgot about him.
We do have an interview with him coming up later in the show, pre-recorded. That is coming at some point.
Yeah, but you don't want to go out and get guys that are going to back up Sellers, right?
Yeah.
You want guys that are going to go push him to be better, regardless of if he wins the job or not. And, honestly, if he doesn't win the job next season, I mean, we know in today's age of college football, most guys are going to go and just transfer out immediately when something doesn't go their way. And, whether you like it or not, that's just how it is nowadays. So, I mean, whoever loses that starting job, whether it's Swan, Jefferson, Murphy, Sellers, whoever they bring in and compete with Sellers, someone's not going to be happy. And that's just the reality of the way things are. But you want to bring someone in who might be better than Sellers, right? The objective is to win games, right? Just because Sellers is a fan favorite does not mean he's winning the job next year. That's just the way it is, right?
Right. Yeah, and with Lenore Sellers, him dominating the twos only leads you to believe one thing. I mean, at least for me, the thing with Sellers is like him ripping up the twos at the end of the game gives you the go ahead that, like, okay, he deserves a shot against the ones. And from everything we're hearing from inside the camp, Jack, and inside the program, is Sellers has the talent to, be the next guy here at South Carolina. Now the question with him is he ready to take it yet? Is he ready to go out there and be the starting quarterback? And again, from everything we've heard and seen so far, yeah, he's got the chops. He just needs to keep his head down and keep doing what he's doing, essentially. Like Dowell said in the middle of the year, the story with his grandmother asked Coach, you still think he sucks? And he said, yeah. So they're trying to keep him humble, trying to keep him, committed to the grind, because they know how special he could be. Now it's just the matter of keeping him on that path, because when you don't want a guy like that to get complacent. But I mean, that's the quarterback situation, Jack.
Yeah, you need someone that can work Lenoris, right? And you also, I mean, it's
with
almost
experience
like
too.
Yeah, but you also want a guy that is going to kind of mentor him, I guess, also in a way. Give him you'd be crazy to think that you wouldn't want KJ Jefferson, right? KJ's been around this conference since 2019, right? He's played at Arkansas. I know Arkansas has been very good over the last few years. I know they're coming off a worse season than South Carolina. And he's a guy that has more experience than Sellers by a long shot, has the same kind of build as him. He's kind of an older version of Sellers because he's a dual threat kind of guy. He can run. He's got size. He can throw the ball pretty well. So you'd be crazy to think that you wouldn't want a guy like that to come in and compete with Sellers, regardless of what happens. But he can also, one of those guys can also be a mentor type of figure for him, whatever happens. So, it's only to Lenoris's benefit. And, Lenoris, we know this past year, like you said, Joe, with the whole Dowell story, I remember asking Clayton White about how Lenoris had been doing at scout team quarterback. I think leading into the Vanderbilt game, actually, coincidentally enough, because Vanderbilt had 3 different quarterbacks playing at that time, and he apparently did really well. He did well against the first team defense for South Carolina. Now, whether that's saying a lot, I don't know, because South Carolina's defense was, quite frankly, not great this season. So, and that's behind closed doors. So we don't know. We can't see that, in person. So I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it is good to get someone in there though to push him a little bit instead of, oh yeah, here's the job, Lenoris, on a silver platter. That's a bad mindset to have. And
Yeah. You
you
need
want
him to work.
yeah, you want the kid to work. You want him to get better. He has all the tools. Let's just see if he can do it next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it says mentor, that's what Rattler was for this year. Yeah, I would agree with that statement for sure. But this isn't like the NFL, right? If you get a good quarterback who's seen a lot of game, you're going to play him, right? You can't necessarily have the veteran quarterback be in there until you're ready to bring the rookie in. It's not like the NFL. The good guys are going to play. So you need a good balance of a guy that's seen a lot of football, but also isn't necessarily going to beat out. I mean, if he can beat out the guy that is the favorite, in this case, Lenore Sellers, if he can beat him out, then awesome. But I mean, you ideally you want him to challenge your guy enough to where he steps up his play and wins out the job outright. But again, like if the guy that you bring in beats out your favorite, then the favorite has more work to be done.
Exactly. And just think about it this way. And this is a hypothetical kind of comparison. But
Thomas
let's
Cox,
just
we're knocking on wood here with this comment. But yeah,
and that's another thing.
it's a
Injuries.
good point.
Look at the way this team got hurt this year. I mean, what if South Carolina does go into next season with Lenore Sellers, Luke Doty, and Dante Reno, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's if one or two of them go down, you're gonna throw like a receiver in there, like Joe said. It's weird. So it's only to your benefit to go out there and get another guy to help and get in that role. But kind of going back to the whole Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson type thing, because I feel like it's a good comparison to have. Rodgers was medically cleared to play this week, and Zach Wilson came off his best game of his career probably last week, right? He threw for 300 yards, won, I think, AFC Offensive Player of the Week or whatever. If Rodgers was good to go this week, you're playing him, right? Doesn't matter what Zach Wilson did. Zach Wilson's a little too streaky. So it's almost like that, because Sellers doesn't have the experience yet. And we'll see what happens, right? I mean, I don't know. There's such a long way to go. The transfer portal, it's only been a week, right? So, I mean, you still got so much time. And, this is just hypothetical talk at this point. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's plenty more to get into. And I mean, still a couple more positions you would want to attack, right? You're, not as deep at linebacker. They're still targeting a Yale linebacker in the portal. His name being, he hasn't committed to a visit, but yeah, Joseph Vaughn, linebacker out of the portal, San Jose, 6'3", 238, with a year of eligibility left from Yale again. And we know the Yale connection, right, Jack? I mean, there's a very, very, very big Yale connection with, you're bringing in quarterback Dante Reno. His dad is the head coach over there at Yale. And again, I famously picked, his Yale Bulldogs to beat Harvard by 1 billion. So, the Yale to South Carolina connection is a very big and a real thing. So, wouldn't be surprised if they're going after him as well. But a lot of guys on visits this weekend too. AJ Swan was one of those guys. Malik Murphy was on a visit as well. Monroe Mills, offensive lineman from Texas Tech. That would be another big depth piece. But yeah, I mean, Shane Beamer's on a roll in the transfer portal right now. And obviously the welcome homes today are really big too. Gerald Kilgore from Tennessee Tech, brother of Jalen Kilgore, defensive back. Jack, what are you seeing out of Gerald real quick?
Yeah, and just one thing real quick. Just saw Pete Nakos on from On3 on Twitter. Sorry for mispronouncing that, Pete. He just tweeted that South Carolina running back Mario Anderson tells On3 Sports he's committed to Memphis. So, so he had Oklahoma and I think Southern Cal in the running. But, with that's it's a big loss, because he was South Carolina's main production at running back last year. But, you're getting 3 guys in return that are really solid. So, sorry about that. But anyway, you were asking about Gerald Kilgore?
Yeah, Gerald Kilgore.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, why not bring in a another family member from the Kilgore bloodline, right? Hey, if one guy's good, the other one might be good too, right?
Yeah.
And Kilgore's the older brother, and I'm sure the stories next season are going to go crazy with these two um,
Yeah.
being on the same defense. I mean, that's kind of cool, right? I mean, I don't know if that's happened lately anywhere, but from what I'm seeing, he seems to be a pretty good player. He had 35 tackles this year, 5 pass deflections, and he could be a real good weapon for this defense next year. I mean, we're going to see what happens, but I think he can be a very good counterpart to Jalen and the other guys on this defense next year, because you're definitely going to need someone with guys like Marcellus Dial leaving.
Yeah, certainly. And depth is a big thing, right? You got banged up in that defensive backfield this year, and you saw what happens when you lose one or two guys that are really, really big key pieces in that defensive backfield. And what happens when one of them goes down? The rest of them, the communication isn't as good. So why not go get a guy who knows one of your best players in that defensive backfield better than anyone else? So Gerald Kilgore, brother of Jalen Kilgore. I think it's a very big addition. The Kilgores are great people. It's a great family, and on Twitter, Mr. Kilgore is very loud and proud of his sons, which is.
I think Joe might.
I unplugged my mic there. I don't know.
It's all good. It's all good. What were you saying?
But yeah, so I mean, the Kilgores are making a case for Gamecock Football Family of the Year. They're awesome on Twitter. So yeah, very big addition in the defensive back room when you can go get a guy like that. Really athletic, lanky, long. So he's going to be big for depth. And then also, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. He's got a very high ceiling. So don't be surprised if he's competing for a starting job in there too. Obviously, Nicky Manwari and DQ Smith have it pretty locked down. But I mean, you'll see both Kilgore brothers in the rotation ideally.
Oh man, it's gonna be pretty cool if they do it reminds me of like when Ken Griffey and senior and junior homered in the same game years ago. It's kind of just reminds me of that, just that sort of what if they both do something crazy in one game. So no, we have not talked about Brady Hunt yet, Scavenger.
No.
But we can go ahead and hit on him real quick.
I was about to. Yeah, that's the other welcome home of the day, and then obviously there was one more that again is probably AJ Swan, but yeah, Brady Hunt coming from Ball State, another Indiana to SC connection. Jack, what are you seeing from him?
Yeah, so he was pretty banged up this year. I don't even think he played at all. If I'm looking at his stats in here and stuff, don't see anything. But I know he was up for preseason, tight end of the year type honors and stuff heading into this year, because he had a really good 2022. He had 46 catches for 498 yards, 5 touchdowns at Ball State. And he averaged 10.5 yards per catch. So I think that's awesome. And he has a huge frame. I saw Mike Yuva kind of comparing him to Hayden Hurst, just with his size and frame and his abilities and stuff. And I think that plays really well at South Carolina, because this team did like throwing to tight ends last year a little bit with Trey Knox and Josh Simon. And obviously Trey Knox is, I think he's out of eligibility, right? So Josh Simon is your main tight end coming back next year. And I know South Carolina like running the 2 tight end set at times. So getting a guy like Hunt, who has experience playing, he's a little bit of an older guy now, but he can go out and catch the ball. He's, I don't know how good of a blocker he is yet, but that remains to be seen. But we know he can catch. So that definitely will help complement Simon's game a good bit. And I think it really plays well for South Carolina's offense, especially just because, receiver is kind of a mystery right now. We don't know what the receiver room is going to completely look like yet. Obviously, they got the guy from Coastal and stuff, but, it remains to be seen what it actually will look like. So getting these 2 tight ends, not bad. And speaking of the devil, what's up, man?
What's going on, fellas?
What is happening? As Mike joins us here on the walkthrough, as I said in my tweet, it was going to be an Intern Joe and Friends episode. So Mike, obviously we're talking portal, currently talking tight end out of Ball State, Brady Hunt. What do you got on him?
Well, the more I've watched tape, and I put this out on the Insider Forum, I think I also put it out on Twitter today. I hate making player comparisons, but having covered Hayden Hurst, very similar body type. Both guys very quick. Obviously, people that got to see Hayden Hurst play here, and I'm not even talking about his NFL days, but he was very quick guy, right? He can make an impact as a pass catcher. When I watch Hunt and what he's been able to do at Ball State, there's a reason why he was on the Mackey watch list heading into this season. And for those of you that don't know what the Mackey watch list is, that is an award that is given annually to the best tight end in college football. So I bring these things up because I think one thing that you'll notice with having a guy like Hunt is he's got size, he's very versatile, but he's a big time pass catcher. And when you look at the question marks that are in South Carolina's wide receiver room, right? I mean, yes, they've been able to bring in some talented guys through the portal, and yes, they have some young talented guys that are working their way up. But at the same time, too, having a pass catching tight end like Hunt can take away some of that pressure from the wide receivers. And that's not to say, okay, he's going to turn into friggin', Travis Kelce, Gronk. No. But he is someone that has the ability to make an impact as a pass catcher. And he also did some pretty nice things, too, as a blocking tight end. So when I think of what that room looks like and just how young it is, Joshua Simon, of course, he's coming back. We saw a lot of good things out of him last season. I felt like at times he had to block a little bit more just because of the inconsistencies on the offensive line. Simon is a guy that can make a difference as a pass catcher as well. And being able to have both those guys, especially a guy like Hunt, who he has a couple of years left of eligibility after this season, you're going to really be able to take advantage of that. So very excited to see what that young man could do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Hunt and the Mac connection. Pete Lembo obviously has some connection to Ball State as well, former head coach there. So that was a very big get. I think he's a very good and big compliment to Josh Simon. So that tight end room is beefing up, and obviously I think they're still going after one or two more guys for that tight end room. And then obviously, Mike, we've been talking about the quarterback room quite a bit, and now the commitment of AJ Swan is now, I believe, public. He's made it public, or maybe not yet. But this quarterback room, we talk about it on Talking Tuesdays. Jack and I just wrapped up talking about it. But what do you have on the quarterback room, and then the potential of adding AJ Swan?
Yeah, so the reports right now, and I know other outlets are reporting that it's expected Gamecock Central is continuing to monitor the situation. Obviously, there's certain things that we sit back and we wait on to make sure that we get the green light on. Having said all that, yeah, it's looking very good that Swan's going to be a Gamecock. The thing about AJ Swan that stands out to me more than anything is that he's a guy that was able to elevate some of the play around him at Vanderbilt. And when you look at a school like Vanderbilt, and I know they become kind of the doormat of the SEC over the years, especially over the last decade plus, even though they've made baby steps to improve, I think some people still look at, Vanderbilt. Well, there's some really talented players that come out of Vanderbilt still every single year. So I think more than anything is you're bringing a guy that has experience of playing in the SEC. Right, number one. Number two, he had to elevate himself and elevate the guys around him simply because the competition they were going up against most of the time each week, the guys they're going up against were usually better than their team, right? They're better than Vanderbilt. So you had to do those things in order to give yourself an opportunity to compete. Now, certainly we can sit here, we can break down some of the statistics. He was able to do some good things. There's also some things that he didn't do that great. But, it's one of those things that when you look at it at face value, you have to start evaluating the fact that, okay, this kid did some good things on a team that's not that great. So again, more than anything, he's going to be able to bring in the experience. He's going to be able to bring in the depth, and he's going to be able to bring in that competition that we're looking for, right? We've talked about it before, and I said this on social media the other night. No one is sitting here saying that Lenora Sellers isn't good. Okay. No one is questioning whether or not Lenora Sellers can be great. But at the same time, too, we haven't seen this young man go out there yet. So why are people getting upset about the idea of adding competition into a thin room? The same way we were talking about any other position. If Sellers is as good as people think he is, adding an experienced quarterback will not change that, right? The cream always rises to the top. If anything, you're only going to get more out of him. Having said all that, And I've said this about Sellers. I've said this about Reno. I'll say this about any player for any position that sees players coming in through the portal. If this bothers anybody, right? If this were to bother Sellers, if this were to bother the running back room, right? Bringing in all the additional players in. If that bothers the idea of competition, then you're not playing at the right place. This is the SEC.
Yep.
This is the friggin' SEC. All right, nothing's going to be given to you. And again, this is not directed at Sellers. This is about any position because South Carolina has been able to bring in multiple running backs. They've been able to bring in several defensive linemen, also one from the JUCO ranks. Competition is what you need, especially when you were a freaking 5-7 team last year. So anybody that's upset by competition, my goodness. I mean, this isn't friggin' the T-ball leagues and everyone gets a friggin' trophy. All right. Whoever is playing in the quarterback room, whoever is playing in the running back room, whoever named that position, if they are good enough or they are that good, they will be the starter. They will be the number one guy. They will be the number two guy if we're talking about the running back room, receiver room, all that kind of stuff. So it just drives me nuts. It drives me. Well, what happens if they hop into the portal? I think that answers your question. They're afraid of competition. Again, that's just in general.
I love it, Mike.
Quarterback position, but it drives me nuts because holy cow.
Yeah.
What are we friggin' doing? This was a 5-7 team last year. We want competition. We want this team to get better, right?
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. We go over, I mean, Jack, you're new to this. We do this every Tuesday night. We go in circles. And it feels like every Tuesday night we do this.
Where's my invite, man?
Yeah.
What's that?
Where's my invite?
For what?
Jack, I'm talking to.
Fucking Tuesdays. Where's my invite?
Fucking Tuesdays? Must have got lost in the mail.
Yeah.
You know, it's the holidays. You know, the post office. It gets a little crowded this time. You know, things have to slow down a little bit.
Dang.
Hardworking people out there. Don't want to. Not taking any shots of our fine postmen and women out there. Just saying, things slow down a little bit this time of the year.
Anyways, Mike, there was another welcome home today. And Gerald Kilgore. How big is that for the defensive backfield? Jack and I also just wrapped up talking about that, but I mean, we think it's huge.
No, I think it's great. I mean, obviously, the fact that he is the brother of Jalen Kilgore, I think that excites a lot of people because people got to see what Jalen was able to do last year. When you go back and watch the tape and see the things that Gerald was able to do at Tennessee Tech, and oh, by the way, this is a young man who came in as a quarterback. And then he moved on over to the defensive side. So I bring that up because there's things that I notice when you have a quarterback playing defense. You see it in high school a lot of times, right? Maybe it's a safety, and you're able to notice certain things that players who play quarterback on defense in the high school ranks are able to do. So I bring that up because we see that, and it's a very common comparison, but we saw that with DQ Smith his first year, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that they're able to understand simply because they understand route concepts. They understand sometimes where the quarterback's trying to go, what they're trying to do from a disguise standpoint. Now, having said all that, there's certain things that he's going to have to get caught up to speed on, right? Literally the speed of the game at this level. But those are things, if you're talented enough, we've seen it in years past with other defensive backs that have come in here that have played at lower schools. You're able to pick things up. If you're good enough, you're going to be able to do that. And I think having his brother here, he's going to have an incredible teacher to be able to get him educated on some of the things that he sees and some of the things that, and they have like that, you know, that ability as brothers to be able to communicate and say, yeah. So I bring it up because, again, the story itself, Kilgore brothers playing alongside each other, that's an incredible story. But more importantly, and the coaching staff would say this, and I'm sure Jalen and even Gerald would say this, more importantly, you have a hell of a football player coming in here and a very smart one at that. 6 feet tall. I believe he's about, 200 pounds, something like that. So 210-ish. So
he's 202.
202. Yeah, they'll beef him up once they get him into an SEC weightlifting program. So, no, he's going to be fun to watch. And I know there's been questions about, okay, why aren't they adding players to this room? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Defensive back, they have some young guys that they're working on up, and they obviously are returning several All-Americans, when you look at the last 2 years. So they have talent in the defensive back room. I think the biggest thing, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, is just being able to have more depth, being able to have more guys that you can throw in there when you're in a situation and someone's gassed a little bit, you can trust them. Because as we know, with that position in particular, and I say that position, I'm talking about the entire defensive back room, nickel, corner, safety, they were playing so many friggin' snaps. And by the end of the game, God forbid something happened, your legs are going to be gassed. So I think it's massive. I think it's massive being able to add more depth, but talented depth at that, who can potentially push guys and try to go for the 2 spots and work their way up the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we were hitting on there, Mike. I mean, with the depth that this defense had to go through, the depth issues that this defense had to go through with guys being hurt, it's good to add a brother of one of the guys who gets it, because nobody knows you like your brother, right? Like, I mean, and so I think the tendencies, that's a big thing. And then also, you're getting a really good athlete in Gerald Kilgore. Yep. I think it's a very, it's a guy with really, really, really high ceiling, and it's what you've seen, the guys in the defensive backfield at South Carolina do in these past years. It's a lot of guys who are really, really athletic, and then Clayton White takes them and then just, turns them into a stud with the defense and kind of just lets them play as well.
Real quickly, and I know some people are noticing this, and I don't want to go too off the track. It's your show.
Yes.
A little bit different. Intern Joe show. I think
Jack brought it up, is what you're.
But On3 is reporting.
Yep.
That Mario Anderson has committed to Memphis. So just for people that have missed that news, literally just came out minutes ago. Again, don't want to take this show into a different direction because it's not my show. I have my own show. But just wanted to bring that up because I think that is noteworthy just to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mario Anderson was a very big part of your backfield. But South Carolina, I mean, it's a good segue too, because we can also talk about the guys that South Carolina has added on the last show that we did for this show, at least for the walkthrough. No one had committed yet. The portal wasn't open. So, Mike, they've pretty much revamped their entire running back room in Rocket Sanders and Oscar Attaway. Walk me through what you're seeing from those two guys, because they're really, really, really big additions.
Well, let's start with Rocket, because everyone, I say everyone, the majority of people that follow the SEC are very familiar with this young man and what he was able to do 2 years ago, rushing for nearly 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns. I mean, he's a guy that is he can be a bruiser, right? In a lot of ways, he can be a bruiser. In a sense, what he reminds me of, which is a little bit more speed, when I always make Gamecock comparisons, when Kevin Harris had the type of season that he had a couple of years back, rushing for over 1,000 yards. So the thing with Rocket, though, I think he can bring more to the table than Kevin could as a pass catcher out of the backfield. That was something, even going into the draft process for Kevin Harris, that was something that was, seen as a negative for him, even though I thought he was a little bit better than some people gave him credit for. But point being is, this is a guy that has experience. Obviously, last season was banged up. And I've mentioned this before. When you come back from a lower body injury, whether it be your knee, whether it be your ankle, whether it be, whatever the case may be, in this case it was ACL. When you do these things, when you come back from an injury, especially a lower body injury, it sometimes takes at least a year to be able to get over that mental hurdle. And we talk about that a lot with some of these athletes. So I bring that up because having the year that he went through this year, right? Not obviously anywhere close to where he was in 2022, also going through a new offensive playbook, right? I think there's a lot of good things that he can be able to do at South Carolina. Having said all that, the other additions, and Jay Diz brings up Howell from SC State. The text message that I got from a coach the other night, and I put this out on the Insider Forum, the way that, I'll pull it up right now just to make sure that I'm saying it verbatim, the way that he compared him, the way that this coach compared this young man to what he was able to do, he said, I said, how would you compare him? And he says, Najee Harris from Bama for sure. He's like, Juwan is a great kid and a dog on the field. He's going to surprise Gamecock Nation. He's a big boy. He's a big boy. Did some good things. Rushed for almost 300 freaking yards. I think it was like 284 against Howard, which was literally like a month ago. Had 3 touchdowns. Also made an impact in the receiving game. So that's a young man who still has 3 years of eligibility left. So when we think about some of these transfer running backs, Rocket Sanders coming in, he only has a year left. You think about the impact. I think sometimes too, when we hear about the transfer portal, some people, not everyone, but some people, they hear it and it's like, all right, it's a quick fix. It can be a quick fix, but it's also an opportunity to start building depth for future years. Now, that's not to say that some of the guys you're bringing in aren't going to see the field at all, but there's also that opportunity where it's like, hey, we don't have to rush this. We don't have to rush this. Another guy too, Oscar Attaway from North Texas.
Yep.
I mean, he leaves ranked, I think it's top 5 in program history for rushing yards. Another guy that went through some injuries in the last year, but he's done some really nice things. He's a guy that is very versatile in the sense that he can be lined up in the backfield as a running back. He can also catch passes out of the backfield. You can line him up in the slot. You can also line him up on the perimeter. So again, going back to the concerns, and I say concerns, not in panic mode, but a lot of unknowns in that wide receiver room still, it can give you the ability to take off some of that pressure by having someone that can make an impact in the passing game as a running back that can, hop from spot to spot. How they use him, we're going to have to wait and see. I don't know if that necessarily means you're going to see Attaway on the perimeter just giving a tap route. I don't think that's going to happen necessarily, but he's someone that gives you that flexibility if you choose to do so. And someone else threw out there, yeah, Daniel Hill's still on the board. Hill's still on the board, so we'll wait.
And he did. I mean, I don't know. Like, people can look into this as much as they want, but he was wearing Carolina gloves in the All-State game, and we don't know. I mean, like
sometimes they have fun, right?
I don't know if it means anything.
Sometimes some of these players, and Marcus Lattimore talked about it a couple weeks ago. He had fun. He knew where he was going in terms of Lattimore during his recruiting process back in 2010. He knew where he was going, and he had some fun with it. So I say that because, I'm sure Hill has an idea, but at the same time, too, he's enjoying the recruiting process. Now, certainly Mississippi State has emerged over the last couple of weeks, and I put this out on the Insider Forum just a little while ago. I think a lot of people are looking like, oh, it's down to Bama and Mississippi State. South Carolina, and I'm not saying that he's not communicating with 2024 commits for those two classes, Bama, Mississippi State, but from everything that I've been told from talking to recruits for the class of 2024, he's still having conversations, and good conversations at that, with Gamecock commits for the class of 2024. So again, I'm not here to say like, okay, that's not happening with Bama or, but anyone that thinks like, all right, yeah, the door's shut, they're bringing all these running backs in. No, I mean, that's just part of college football now. You can't wait. And I'll say this too. If Swan does come in, because I know some people are going to get maybe upset. Okay, why don't they do Murphy? Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Remember where South Carolina was a year ago with the running back situation. There were 2 running backs in particular that they were going after, one more than the other. That one eventually ended up going to LSU. And then what happened? Well, South Carolina spent a little bit too much time on him, and they weren't able to get their number 2 option.
Yep.
And then you ended up with the situation that you had at running back. Now, Mario Anderson certainly turned into a very nice back during his time at South Carolina. But the point being is you were in a situation where you could have prevented that, or you could have had a better opportunity to prevent some of that. So I say that because I think, and granted, a little different this year, right? I mean, you're not in a bowl game. You have more time to spend with all this stuff. But I think that's another reason why South Carolina is being very proactive, and they're not waiting. They can't have this waiting game. We know Hill's not going to commit until January 6th, but you have to be proactive, right? Matthew Fuller, we've talked about this before. Number 11 running back in the country now, by on 3. More schools are starting to come in, reaching out to him. That's not to say that he's going to, flip his commitment, but the point being is, God forbid something happens, you need to be proactive. You need to be proactive. So that's what I would say to that. Just like the quarterback situation. If Swan comes in here and they still feel like they can get Murphy or whatever, deal with the headaches of having too many quarterbacks in the room. Because again, look back to last year, offensive line with the injuries. Think about what happened in the running back room last year. Be proactive. And I think that's why South Carolina is not, playing grab ass this year. I think they're just going right at it, and they're just saying, all right, we're going to get some commitments right now. obviously you have to deal with having only X amount of scholarships, but at the same time too, you got to be proactive. You can't be sitting, and I think some people sit in this fantasy world where they're just like, oh, we're going to be able to get this person, that person. Well, what happens if that doesn't happen? Now what? Now you're sitting around, you're looking like a jabroni. So you got to figure out things. You got to be active, and I think that's why South Carolina is not wasting any time this offseason.
Yeah,
I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. Joe, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Yeah, just leapfrogging off that. I mean, it's a good problem to have, right? You get more running backs in there. And like you said, Rockets only got 1 year of eligibility left, right?
Correct.
Yep. So you have Attaway and Howell, who both have multiple years of eligibility left. You have, I mean, look, Sanders is probably going to get the bulk of the carries this year. Let's just be quite honest. I mean, as long as he's healthy, that's probably going to be your go-to guy at the running back one. That's not to say these other guys won't get carries, but I mean, Sanders is, he was almost a 1,500-yard rusher 2 years ago, right? So, but going towards the future, I mean, you have these other two guys, Attaway and Howell, and then potentially Daniel Hill, Matthew Fuller, like you said, any recruit that you bring in. It's never a bad thing to have too many guys, right? I mean, it's a good problem to have when you have so many guys that are that good. And then with Lenoris, I mean, your run game could really be super solid next year. And I mean, we'll see what happens. But like you said, Mike, I mean, it's a real good problem to have when you have too many guys out there that can really be, assets. And they've all proven to be good. Howell, I mean, I know he played at NC State, but he was a good running back last year. Like you said, the Najee Harris comparison, I can see that. Harris was a really good running back in college at Alabama. And now with the Steelers, I can see that comparison there. And then Attaway, he's been around at North Texas for a few years now. And he's been a consistent rusher. So it's a real good thing that you have these kind of guys out there that can go ahead and what you're going to get from them pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I appreciate you jumping on. I know you have somewhere else to be real quick, but this was an Intern Joe and Friends episode, so we appreciate you jumping on. Thanks, boss.
Hey, real quick, Joe, I want to add this on to you just real quick. So, and you can make stats sound any way the way you want, right? Whatever, you say this or that. But just for what it's worth, South Carolina currently ranked number 4 in this year's transfer portal rankings. And, that thing continues to go up and down. But right now they're number 4. Bottom line, they're having a real good offseason. Last year, from the portal standpoint, a lot of people felt like South Carolina didn't do enough in the portal. And again, some of it, which we just alluded to, probably not being as proactive as they needed to be at certain positions. And it kind of bit them in the butt. Last year, South Carolina ranked 46th. The year before that, right, 2022, the year when they were able to bring in Spencer Rattler, Juice Wells, right? They had one of the best transfer portal off seasons by any team in the country. And that certainly led to a lot of success that South Carolina had in 2023 in Rattler's first year. They were ranked number 3. So right now they're ranked 4th. So again, these things can go up and down. And, we can look at the other schools too. Some of those schools did well. Some of them didn't. But the point being is at least what South Carolina has shown in a small sample size is when they do have a successful offseason via the transfer portal, they've been able to do some good things. When they don't, which we saw last year, again, being able to add depth is very important. Competition, depth. We can't just keep saying it over and over and over. So that's why it's something I would tell people to just continue to pay attention to over on 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're ticking up. I think the bottom line with this year is they're just trying to go for depth. I mean, you were so handcuffed with depth last year. You're trying to get as many guys with high ceilings that you can put in and play as you can. So the more the merrier at this point, right?
There you go. Happy holidays, Joe. That a boy. Yes. Merry Christmas.
Exactly.
Look at that.
Mike,
the more the
thank
merrier.
you for joining us tonight. Happy holidays to you as well. We'll be live for Talking Tuesdays and then probably the signing day special as well on Wednesday night as well. And then, we should be a fun week for Gamecock Central.
All right. Merry Christmas, fellas.
Yes.
See ya.
Thank you, Mike. But anyways, Jack, we've got one more special surprise, but I know you have to get out here too. Anything else for the people before I let you go?
Yeah. I'll kind of just piggyback off of what Mike was saying and all that, what I was talking about earlier in the show. It's been a great show, by the way. Thanks again for having me on. But, it really, like I said before, what a difference a week makes, right? Guys, I mean, look, the sky was falling a week ago. Gamecock Twitter was They were losing their minds even on the forums too, right? But look, South Carolina, like you said, Joe, they're going out and getting depth. They're getting guys. And, it's not just depth at this point. You're going out and getting the best players possible. You're not getting Rocket Sanders just to have him sit on the bench. He's going to be your go-to back next year. You're getting all these other guys that you can – I don't want to say you stow away guys like Howell and Attaway because I think they're going to see their time next year. But they're also going to, be good pieces down the road. So I think this is a huge, huge offseason for Shane Beamer, because last year with the transfer portal kind of swung and missed. The year before, he did great. And look how the results kind of turned out. So, South Carolina after 5-7 last year, nothing is off the table. And, I'm looking for a real big week right here with, I think it was the early signing day coming up and all that with the transfer portal and all that. So really big time. And, it should be good for South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. No better time to be subscribed to Gamecock Central. Jack, we appreciate you jumping on with me on this show. You've been a guest before, so I'm looking forward to having you back after the holidays. Happy holidays to you and the family.
Yeah, happy holidays, happy Christmas, Festivus, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever you guys celebrate around here. Happy holidays. Hope everyone has a good December 25th and all that. And Joe, thanks again for having me on, man. Always appreciate it.
No worries. Absolutely. And that was Jack Veltri, obviously full-time now at Gamecock Central. So at this point in the show, I promised I have an interview with Dante Reno. That is coming up. I'm bringing that up currently. So that it was a really good interview. It was great catching up with Dante. He's the man. So yeah, currently I did see a question about Malik Murphy. And that situation is still currently ongoing. Obviously, AJ Swan is rumored to commit. Nothing yet confirmed with Gamecock Central, but it is in the works. So stay tuned to Gamecock Central for all of your stuff. And then obviously if something happens before we wrap up here, before this interview is over, I'll be sure to update it as well. But here is my interview with quarterback Dante Reno. All right. So Luke says you guys can't hear this. So I'm gonna pivot. This interview will be live on YouTube. I'll make it public as soon as this show is over. So let's see. Yep. Rooster. Yeah, guys, I got it. So that interview actually will be on our YouTube page. As soon as this wraps up, I'll post it currently. But it's a whole interview with quarterback Dante Reno. Should be a lot of fun catching up with him. Yeah, so he's got the All-America game cooking as well. He was just the captain. He's getting ready to make his selections up there. But yeah, so that will do it for this week's edition of the walkthrough. Like I said, go watch our interview with Dante Reno. It's a walkthrough sponsored interview, so it's really, really, really good. It's always a good time catching up with Dante. Yeah, Luke, no worries. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys tuning in for this live edition of the walkthrough. Hit the comments, yeah, I appreciate it. Guys, yeah. If you guys like the live version, let me know. I know during transfer portal season, it is kind of nice to do it live because that way you guys can get in, ask me the questions, whether who we're updated on, who we're not. So yeah, if you guys like the live version, let me know. And we'll be sure to do it. And then I think next week we are off for the holiday because obviously the show will go live on the 24th. So Christmas Eve. So everyone enjoy Luke, sweet. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing it in the new year, at least through transfer portal season and into baseball season and spring football once things calm down. It's definitely something we're going to look at going forward. But it was fun. I appreciate everyone tuning in. It was good. We got a lot of people in here. So sweet. Yeah, I appreciate it. So that's big. Yeah. But yeah, other than that, again, Mike and I will be live for Talking Tuesdays, and then also we will be doing a special signing day edition of GC Live on Wednesday, I believe, and then we will also have another edition of Talking Tuesdays. Mike and I are going to run through the entire signing class before we both head on Christmas break, on our little break, going home for the holidays. So we'll have that rundown of the entire recruiting class on Talking Tuesdays next week. But as always, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. It means a lot for all y'all tuning into this live edition. So we'll keep it going next week. So and again, check out my full interview with Dante Reno up on the YouTube right now. So thank you guys for joining in, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Obviously, we're off for the holiday break, but see you guys soon, and happy holidays from everyone here at GC.